Hi, and welcome to another narrative, presented to you by yours truly, Cryptids Roost. If you enjoy this and other stories, please be so kind as to hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe. This will help with the YouTube's algorithm and will help promote the channel some more. Now, even though I'm not yet monetized by YouTube, I am in the process of creating some awesome merch for you guys. So be sure to look out for the info cards promoting this in the upcoming videos. Okay, right, now on to the next story. Something happened 65 million years ago, and I need your help to stop it. This wonderful new series is written by Reddit user Odd Directions. I don't have much time. I'm risking my life posting this. I never thought I would have become a whistleblower, but here I am. This is too important to be kept a secret. My conscience won't allow it. I'm also reaching out in the hopes that someone will be able to help me. Read the following testimony and decide for yourself what you're willing to do to assist me. I'm Ian Foster, a paleontologist working at the University of Alberta. At least that is what I was before all of this happened. I don't think any of this should be forgotten, although I don't know if I can prevent that from happening. I was working on a dig site in Mexico, excavating prehistoric invertebrates, when a woman named Kyra Calder called me. She was with the Canadian Joint Incident Response Unit. I hadn't heard of them before, but apparently they were a subunit of the Canadian Special Operations Forces Command. Kyra told me they had sent a plane to pick me up at the airport. She wasn't at liberty to disclose any details over the phone. All she said was that there had been a discovery. I couldn't imagine what type of discovery would both involve the military and a paleontologist, but I was excited to find out. As soon as I exited the plane at Pearson Airport, I was escorted to a military vehicle that drove me half a kilometre to a camouflage painted helicopter waiting on a defunct helipad at the end of the airport. Armed guards had been placed around it. Kyra, who turned out to be a young lieutenant, helped strap me in and sat down next to me. There was an elderly man in full uniform sitting in front of us, a general. He had black sunglasses on, but I could still tell that he was looking at me. I reached forward and offered to shake his hand. He smiled and gave me a firm handshake. "I'm Ian," I said as loud as I could while the rotor blade started spinning above us. "You don't have to yell," I heard the general's voice in my headset. "I know who you are. I'm Jordan Simmons." He turned to Kyra and said, "You didn't tell him yet, did you?" "No, sir," Kyra said. "Tell me what?" I was still anxious to know. The helicopter was taking off now. "I don't even know where we're going." "She didn't even tell you that?" Jordan said with a smirk on his face. "Well, what we're dealing with is top secret, so we can't tell you anything before you've been given proper clearance and signed the NDA. We'll take up all that at the site, don't worry. But I can tell you where we're going. The site is located in Yukon. That's where we're going now, close to the border." "Are the Americans involved?" I asked. Jordan laughed. "No, but by now they've probably noticed our recent activity in the area, so our ambition is to get this done as quickly as possible. That's where you come in. You'll be briefed about it at the site, so just sit back and relax for now." Relax? I was bewildered. I began considering some far-out ideas that I would never have thought about if it wasn't for the military presence and their secrecy. The one that intrigued me the most, and that seemed the most plausible among my implausible ideas, was that they had found a living specimen of a prehistoric species that they now wanted me to identify. A living dinosaur. It was a ridiculous thought, of course, but still very exciting. It had been one of my most common fantasies during childhood, to get a chance to see a living dinosaur. Thinking about it now, I felt like a little kid again. We landed on a field in the middle of nowhere. It was chilly. something made worse by the fact that I wasn't dressed properly. "You'll be given some warmer clothes when we arrive," Jordan said, while we were waiting outside the helicopter. Jordan lit a half-smoked cigar that he had kept in his breast pocket. A military jeep appeared in the distance. The sun was about to set behind some white-capped mountains, making it darker for every passing minute. The jeep turned on its headlights, and when it arrived, the stars had appeared in the sky. My heartbeat increased more and more the closer we got to wherever we were going. I imagined the so-called site to be a temporary base of operations, with military tents and some kind of storage unit where they kept the Discovery. This turned out to be wrong. About 2 hours later, we arrived at a recently abandoned construction site in the middle of the boreal forest. The military personnel, only around 30 men and women, were using the facilities formerly used by the construction workers. "You'll sign all the necessary papers now," Kira said. "After that, you'll be shown the barracks where you'll meet the rest of the team. You'll all be briefed in the morning." After I'd signed all the papers, and there were a lot of them, I was shown the barracks where the rest of my team was. They were already sleeping in their bunks, but Kira woke them up by turning on the lights. There were 4 people, all of them civilians, just as myself. I recognised one of them from the conference I had attended once. They shortly introduced themselves to me. We weren't all paleontologists, it turned out, but everyone except one had experience in fieldwork on different dig sites. There was one more paleontologist and 2 archaeologists. The last guy was apparently a railway enthusiast. This setup pretty much killed my childish dream of seeing a living dinosaur. We weren't here because of my expertise in prehistory, but because of my experience with carefully digging things up from the ground. It made me feel ridiculous for even considering my far-out idea. I also felt disappointed. Was this just some boring excavation of some forgotten Cold War equipment or something? My confusion prevented me from getting any sleep during most of the night, and just when I felt ready to doze off, Jordan opened the door and let in the light of dawn. "Howdy," he said, with a new cigar between his lips and a friendly grin on his face. "Please get dressed and step outside. I will brief you on the way to the location." Kira stood next to him with some papers in her hand. I was the first to join them outside of the barracks. It was chilly outside, but the morning sun still gave me a warm feeling. I could see my breath evaporating in the air. A few armed guards patrolled the area in the distance. I could hear some radio chatter in their direction. The next person to come out of the barracks was the train enthusiast. He was slightly overweight and maybe in his mid-20s. "I'm Rodney Timbrell," he said. "I like trains." He had some trouble making eye contact, and he scratched his chin with his finger while he talked, as if it was a nervous tic. "I'm Ian," I said. "I like dinosaurs." Rodney immediately looked me in the eye and smiled. "What's your favourite dinosaur?" he said, with that normal enthusiasm in his otherwise robotic voice. I began, but was interrupted by the others coming outside. There was a woman my age named Jiang Chen, and the 2 middle-aged men named Stephen Williams and Miguel Boisclair. They all looked sleep-deprived. "Okay," Jordan said, and began walking up towards the forest. Kira was a bit surprised by this and quickly ran up to him. "Come on, let's get going," Jordan continued. We all followed. "What do you think they found?" Jiang whispered to me. "I have no idea, to be honest," I said. I didn't want to admit what I had been thinking. "It's probably some military equipment, maybe an aircraft or some weapon." 2 weeks ago, the construction workers at this site accidentally unearthed something," Jordan said as he continued to walk. "It's the kind of thing you wouldn't believe if I told you, so I'm going to show you. It's not dangerous though, so no need to be alarmed. It's just, well, it's strange. Frankly, I'm hoping you'll be able to give me a better explanation than I'm able to give you. Perhaps it's nothing, and we can all go home tomorrow. We came to a clearing where the construction workers had just begun digging the foundation to a building. The military had put the hole under a camouflage tent, and 3 armed guards surrounded it. It made me feel uneasy. "Come on," Jordan said. "Step forward and look down this hole." It wasn't deep, but they had reached the bedrock. I couldn't see anything out of the ordinary. "You can't see it, can you?" Jordan said. "It's small, and I bet it's too strange for your brains to even consider the pattern, but it's there. Look at the corner," he pointed with his cigar. "Look carefully." We all gathered at the corner of the hole and looked down. It wasn't obvious, but after being told to look for something out of the ordinary, it took us only a few seconds to recognise it. Rodney was the first to speak. "Those are train wheels." "That's what it looks like," Jordan said. "Train wheels. Or to be precise, fossilised train wheels." The pattern was obvious. 2 train wheels seen from the outside. I didn't know what to believe. If it truly was a fossil, it was older than any train that had ever existed. Miguel laughed. "You brought us all the way here for this? Tabernacle. It's obviously fake." "And how did you reach that conclusion?" Jordan said calmly. "Because there weren't any trains that far back in the past." "Well, that's the conundrum," Jordan said. "There shouldn't be any fossilised trains, and yet here we are, looking at one." "Well, it's a hoax," Miguel said, "or someone's art project." "The construction workers didn't just dig this hole and find the train wheels like this," Kira said. "They removed a layer of the bedrock and found this underneath. Unless someone was able to carve the inside of the rock, the fossil is genuine. Or the construction workers removed a piece of rock that had been placed on top of it," Jiang said. "I mean, what you're suggesting here is impossible. Any other explanation is better." Jordan sighed and said, "We know this is real. Before we decided to bring you here, we successfully, albeit a bit unprofessionally, removed some more of the layer of rock and were able to reveal more of the wheels. So no one has carved this pattern into the rock." "But sir," I said with some hesitation, "these are the kind of rock that we found dinosaurs in close to Alberta. It's millions of years old. I can't say anything for sure without a closer examination, but I'm pretty confident that—" "Before we brought you here," Jordan said, "we had some of the rock sent to a lab for dating. I'm no expert, but... Kira, help me out here, would you?" "Sir, they use radiometric dating methods," she said. "And?" Jiang asked. "How old is it?" "It's..." Kira cleared her throat as if she was about to say something she couldn't wrap her own mind around. "It's approximately 65 million years old." Jiang crouched down and put her hands on her forehead in disbelief. I felt the same way. I think we all did. There was a moment of silence, and then Jordan spoke. "It's a tough nut to crack." He took a puff of his cigar. "That's why we brought you here. We suspect there's an entire train car hidden beneath the rock, and we need you to unearth it for us." "It's a subway!" Rodney exclaimed with a huge smile on his face while scratching his face excessively. "The wheel arrangement hints at an electric train, most likely a subway car considering the size." Everyone looked at him. "You can tell that just from this small part of the..." Jordan said. "Yes," Rodney said, "I can tell." He giggled. "Well, there you go," Jordan said. "I must admit I was sceptical of bringing you on board instead of a professional, but you're already proving yourself useful. Is there anything more you can say about this train?" No, Rodney said, and began to rock back and forth a little bit with a concerned look on his face. "I don't know." Jiang reached for his arm, trying to calm him down. Don't touch me! Rodney stepped back and began walking away. Kira, Jordan said. Kira nodded and followed Rodney back to the barracks. No one in Canada knows more about trains than Rodney, Jordan continued. He can identify any train from just seeing a tiny part of it, but as you might have noticed, he's a bit challenged. We all need to be calm around him, and for the love of God, don't touch him. He hates that. All of this was difficult to digest, to say the least. A fossilised subway car, at least 65 million years old? Even though the evidence was as clear as day, I still couldn't bring myself to believe it. But after working on the dig for about a week, it slowly dawned on me that this was actually happening. With unlimited funding, the dig was a dream come true for all of us. The mystery of it all made it even more exciting. But it was hard work, probably the hardest work I've ever done in the field. We were short-staffed, given the General's orders to keep as few as possible in the know, and we took a beating because of the cold weather. Still, we worked tirelessly from dawn till dusk every day. Little by little, more of the train car was revealed. I worked closest to Jiang, to begin with because she was the only other paleontologist on the site, but later on because we clicked in a way that I hadn't clicked with a woman in a long time. We had a lot more in common than just our field of work, it turned out, and over time I began daydreaming of asking her out when all of this was over. She worked pretty far from me at a university in Ontario, but if things worked out, I thought I wouldn't mind moving there. All of this was maybe wishful thinking, but I thought I saw some signs that my feelings were mutual. About 3 months in, while exposing one of the windows in the middle section of the train car, we began seeing a truly disturbing pattern. It was one of the passengers, the only one we found. We could only see the person vaguely as a partly eroded face looking straight at us through the window. It was twisted in an expression of horror. After having excavated a larger part of this section, we could see that the person held something up against the window. All we could tell from looking at the fossilised object was that it was rectangular in shape. There were no details indicating what it could have been. They had vanished a long time ago. We all stood around the face in a circle, looking at it without saying anything. "Well, I'll be damned," Jordan finally said after lit another cigar. "A person? It doesn't look like he wanted to be there." He paused and looked at Kira, who stood next to him. "Do you think this changes things?" "I wonder who he is," Jiang said. "A time traveller?" We had talked a lot about where the subway car could have come from. Miguel still insisting on explanations that didn't violate any laws of physics, but over time his explanations had become more and more constrained. After all, it only looked like one thing: time travel. Because this, none of us would have believed in it, of course, but aside from Miguel, it had now become our working hypothesis. We hadn't been given any chance to talk about it with Jordan though, who didn't want to discuss the military's theories with us. It wasn't until now, when staring at the face in the ground, that he spoke about it. "An involuntary time traveller," he said. "This does change things." "What are you telling us?" I asked. "We need to be in the know if you want us to be able to do a good..." "All right, well," he said, "all we have is speculations really. Our team of experts back in Ottawa theorised that it was a result of some future experiments with time travel. A test to see if an object of the size of a train car could be sent back in time. Now, if that would have been the case, there wouldn't have been any passengers on it. So yeah, this changes things." "Couldn't they have just used the train car?" Stefan began. "As a time machine," Jordan said. "This isn't Back to the Future. They wouldn't pick a subway car as their vehicle of choice. Somehow this happened by accident, and frankly, that worries me." He stormed off, and a few minutes later we could hear him yell something on the phone inside his barracks. We didn't hear what he said, but it was clear that he was agitated. We continued to dig for 3 more months before anything else happened. Early one morning, Jiang called out my name. She was working on what looked like the front of the subway car. I walked over to her and asked what was up. "I just removed some rock matrix here," she said. "And well, take a look. What do you see?" "It looks like letters," I said. There were 3 letters, all with some spaces between them. "Exactly. The first one is B. The rest of the letters weren't capitalized. They were H and Z. I think it spelled a word once, but some of the letters are missing," Jiang said. "That would mean," I said. A shadow appeared in front of us. We looked up. It was Rodney. He looked down on us with a huge smile on his face. "Oh," Jiang said. "Hey, Rodney." "Hey," he said. "Those are letters." "Yes, they are," Jiang said. "Are they telling you something?" He began scratching his chin out of excitement. "Yes." "What?" I asked. "Subway cars often have serial numbers or other type of destinations, such as names," Rodney said. "Right," Jiang said, and then she continued in a whisper. "Rodney, can you make a promise?" "Yes." He smiled even more now. "Don't tell anyone about this. Don't tell Miguel, don't tell Stefan, don't tell Kira, and most importantly, don't tell Jordan." "Wait," I said. "What's going on?" Jiang picked up her rock hammer and smashed it down on the letters, destroying them. "Whoa!" I said. "What are you—" "Shh!" she hissed. "Don't you understand?" "What?" I said. "You just damaged the most important fossil ever discovered." "Time travel," Rodney said, grinning. I looked up at him, confused. "Look, Ian," Jiang said. "What do you think will happen when we're done here?" I don't know, but they will fly this beauty to some secret base, and that will be the last we see of it. We will be sent home, forced to keep this to ourselves, or else be sent to some maximum security prison for the criminally insane. We are just the dig team." I began to see her point, but I still didn't dare to think it. "Right now, somewhere in the world, and for some unknown reason," she said, "there's a subway car that at some point in time will travel back 65 million years, and these letters might be the only way to figure out which one it is." "You don't know that," I said. "It might already have happened, or it might not happen until 100 years from now." "True," Jiang said, "but don't you want to know for sure?" "Say we find it," I said. "What are you suggesting we do then?" There was a moment of silence, and then I heard Rodney's robotic voice over my head again. "Time travel." Jiang had been right. After we had unearthed the subway car, we helped them fly it out of there and were sent home without any acknowledgement whatsoever. They interviewed Rodney for every new part we dug up, but he never said anything about the letters. He seemed to enjoy keeping the secret, feeling as if it was part of our little group. And he was. Spending 6 months this close together, the dig team, including Rodney, felt a little bit like family. Back at home, I missed that. The only person I kept contact with was Jiang. By now I was in love with her, but I still hadn't brought it up. Since we lived too far away from each other to hang out, we had to resort to texting and occasionally talk on the phone. Even if nothing more happened between us, I was happy to stay in touch with her. It was nice to have someone to share the experience with. Of course, we didn't just share memories about what had happened, we also talked about the letters. I never returned to the dig site in Mexico. Somehow, digging up prehistoric invertebrates didn't feel as exciting anymore. I couldn't stop thinking about the subway car, and neither could Jiang. We spent a lot of our free time researching different subway systems, trying to find a subway car that had a word with the letters B, H and Z. written on it. It was like finding a needle in a haystack. We didn't have any success, and after a few months I began to think that the subway car we were looking for hadn't been built yet. It was time for me to move on, I thought, but just a few days later I received a phone call. "What's your favourite dinosaur?" "Rodney, is that you?" "Yes." "I'm happy to hear from you. How are you doing?" "I found it." "You found it?" "Yes." Are you talking about the subway car?" "Yes." "Well, where is it?" "It's in Stockholm." Rodney's childish excitement made me smile. "The name of the car is Balthazar. It fits with the letters and the spaces between them. All the subway cars within the Stockholm metro have different names. This particular car is named after Professor Balthazar in the Croatian animated TV series. It was made for children and focuses on an old inventor. It was produced between 67 and 70. "Okay, slow down," I said. "I don't need to know all the details about that. Are you saying this subway car is being used right now in the Stockholm metro?" "Yes. Aren't you paying attention?" I was texting Jang as I spoke with Rodney. "Talking to Rodney right now. He has found it." "Rodney, have you talked to anyone else?" "No, it's our secret." "Okay, good. Where are you now?" "In Stockholm." "What?" I was more than surprised to hear this. "How did you—" "First I took a taxi to the Toronto Pearson Airport. There I bought a ticket to—" "Right," I said. "Well, have you localised the subway car?" "I'll wait for you and Dr. Chen. I'm staying at the Radisson Blu Waterfront Hotel. Get over here now. I don't like to wait, okay?" I was excited to go to Stockholm to investigate the subway car. Given how extraordinary this discovery was, it would have been foolish not to go, and equally foolish to return before we had the answers we wanted. Hence this had to be, if not a lifetime commitment, so at least a research project spanning years. Jiang texted me and said that she was already packing, but I still needed some time to think it all over. In the end, however, I decided to take a leave of absence from the university. Jiang gave me some additional motivation to go, just by going herself. If I came along, it would mean I would get to meet her again, and maybe get a chance to be with her like I had wanted for so long. I brought the plane ticket to Stockholm and almost packed my entire wardrobe since I didn't know when I would return. Part of me wondered if I should have prepared more for the possibility of travelling back in time. But the idea of catching the subway car at the right time, if there even was such a time, still seemed insane to me. It would most likely take several years of travelling, and even then there weren't any guarantees. I was happy just going there to see if we could find some clues. I didn't meet Jiang until I came to Stockholm a few days later. It was just as nice to see her again as I had thought. Embracing her, even only as a friend, convinced me that I had made the right decision. We went to the hotel Rodney was staying at together. He opened the door with a huge smile. He had a white t-shirt on saying, "I love trains," with a locomotive printed on it. We started talking about what to do and how to do it, almost immediately. I was just about to suggest my modest plan of trying to find clues, perhaps by investigating the tunnel system, when Jiang interrupted me by saying, "I think the first question we need to ask ourselves is how can we make sure to be on the train the day it goes back in time?" "Hold on," I said. "We don't know if it's even going to travel back in time. I mean, it's still possible that one of Miguel's more down-to-earth explanations is true, and even if it does travel back in time, it could be years, even decades from now. During all that time, we would have to travel on this specific subway car every day." "So?" Jiang said. "I'm ready to sell my house if it means—" "Oh, come on," I said. We would have to live like homeless people, giving up everything for the slight chance. Rodney's smile had grown bigger and bigger while listening to us, and now he finally spoke up. You don't need to worry. The Traffic Administration has ordered 48 new trains of model C30 at a cost of 5 billion Swedish crowns. The trains are manufactured in Germany and deliveries have already started. Right now, tests are being carried out without passengers. Therefore, tests with passengers will be done and evaluated before the trains can be taken into full operation, probably in about 1 or 2 years. Initially, the new trains will only roll along the Red Line, which happens to be the same line where Balthazar is being used. That means we have a time frame, Jiang said. We know that the subway car will travel back in time before it's put out of commission, since there was a passenger inside the fossil. 2 years is still a long time, and I swallowed heavily. We would basically have to live within the metro system during that time. How will we support ourselves? I mean, for crying out loud, how will we be able to even go to the bathroom? They have public restrooms here and there, Jiang said. I don't know. We'll figure it out, Rodney said. It'll be fun. Still, I said, we will basically live like the beggars who are travelling the subway all day. But we won't be beggars, Jiang said. We'll be on a scientific expedition, albeit an unusual one. And 2 years is just the worst case scenario, and it isn't that long. Rodney had grown impatient by all the talking and exclaimed, I want to live on this train and go see some dinosaurs. I love trains and dinosaurs. I didn't think it was responsible of us to bring Rodney along. He had been of great help to us, but he didn't seem to understand how dangerous our plans were, and if we were to succeed with the impossible, I couldn't imagine him surviving for long. It's not safe, I said in a last attempt to save him from his own determination. We might not make it. I don't care, he said, rocking back and forth. I want to go. I want to go as soon as possible. I can help, trust me. I know a lot about dinosaurs as well. We began travelling with Balthazar. It was a strange feeling seeing the subway car in our own time, knowing where it might end up. It was as if seeing something that had already happened. In the beginning, each trip from the start of the line to the end of the line filled me with excitement. Even though it was still difficult for me to imagine actual time travel, I still watched the other passengers and imagined myself spending the rest of my life with them, 65 million years into the past. We spent the time before travelling preparing and making it easier for us to be underground as much as possible. In the end, Jiang did sell her house to support us, and since I knew how to code, I began working as a freelance developer, which could be done while sitting on the subway. We stayed at the hotel for a month before we were able to find a cheap enough apartment to rent second hand. To survive, we had to live frugally. We didn't even bother with buying furniture, except for 3 collapsible beds and a table from IKEA. The idea was that we would only use the apartment for sleeping and meetings. There were a lot of things to figure out, for example, what to bring to the late Cretaceous. It was the trip of a lifetime, both figuratively and literally. Most likely, if we were to be successful, we wouldn't be able to get back to our own time. Getting a hold of firearms legally in Sweden proved to be too difficult, so we had to resort to other means. Surprisingly, it was Rodney who solved this problem after some intense research on the dark web. A criminal organisation agreed to sell some hand grenades and 2 automatic submachine guns that were small enough for us to hide in our bags. A larger rifle would have been better, but it would have been too risky to travel with. Other than the weapons, we also spent some time getting our hands on a research tent and some rolls of solar panels. Those items, together with 2 plastic buckets that we planned on collecting rainwater in, made our packing heavy, which wasn't optimal. We lived like this, like underground dwellers, for a long time. Days became weeks and weeks became months. People began to recognize us, probably assuming we were living on the streets. Some people even gave us coins. My beard, which was long and shabby at this time, most likely contributed to this. This became our life. It was painful, humiliating, and degrading. We lost so much weight that we almost didn't recognize ourselves in the mirror. Jiang remained equally beautiful in my eyes though, but it wasn't a healthy lifestyle for any of us. The only thing that kept us going was the explorer's dream to go where no one had gone before, and to see what no one had seen before. After 1 year, Jiang became depressed. I felt the same. It wasn't that she was giving up, it was just such a hard life. She cried a lot at night. I tried to comfort her, but for some reason it always felt uncomfortable. I had never confessed my feelings for her, mostly because she had never showed me any signs of sharing them. But I think she knew, which made my approaches awkward. Rodney didn't seem to be as bothered by our way of life. He said it was similar to how he used to live before. He shifted his interest completely from trains to survivalism and living in the wild. During this time he read every book on the topic and had practically memorized everything. Just before Jiang and I gave up under the pressure, almost at the 2-year mark, someone I recognized stepped on the train. For a few seconds I couldn't place her, but then Rodney said, "Kira?" How had she found us? The train, filled with students going to Stockholm University, left the platform. A pretty long tunnel for the one between Tekniska Högskolan and Universitetet lay ahead. Would this be the end of the line for us? I assumed Kira had come to arrest us. Or had they kept track of us to see if we would solve the mystery? But why show up now and not when we found Balthazar? Kira picked up a gun from her jacket, pointed at me and yelled from the top of her lungs, "Dr. Foster! Get over here! Right!" I remember the next moment as if it happened in slow motion. A shockwave coming out of nowhere made the entire train shake. It was as if we were derailed, and yet we kept moving forward. The lights in the ceiling flickered in and out. Some of the passengers screamed out of fear of Kira's gun, and some out of fear of the violent shaking. A lot of people fell down on top of each other. This was the day. I didn't have time to think it, but I felt it deep down. This otherwise ordinary day in May was the day it happened. I felt bad for the rest of the passengers. They hadn't asked to be part of this. The lights went out completely and were replaced by total darkness. Panic erupted. People were stepping on each other, trying to get up. Here and there, phones lit up, revealing frightened faces. I grabbed Jiang's hand and pulled her towards me. "It is happening!" I heard Rodney yell. "It is happening!" A bang. First I thought Kira's gun had gone off, but it was too loud for that. Some of the windows exploded inwards from the sound. My ears were ringing, and then in the blink of an eye, sunlight flooded the subway car and everything stopped moving. It took some time for our eyes to adjust to the bright light. A strange calm of confusion spread through the subway car. Slowly I began to see shapes and colours outside. "It's beautiful," Jiang said with tears in her eyes. "We made it." Everyone got up to their feet, trying to orient themselves and understand what had happened. Kira was acting differently though. She was in a different kind of distress. It was almost as if she had expected something would happen. She panicked and tried to push her way through the crowd to get away from the window, but she couldn't. "Dr. Foster, you have to..." I couldn't hear the rest because of all the commotion around us. I saw tears forming in Kira's eyes, and then she slowly turned around to face the window. She put the gun to her own head, but she didn't have time to pull the trigger. Someone screamed, a scream that spread to everyone else, and in that next moment my childhood dream came true. "It's blue," Rodney said. The feathered head of a Tyrannosaurus Rex, with a blue haze to it, stuck his head inside the window and grabbed Kira with its gruesome teeth. Everyone tried to get away from the window. A young girl, maybe just 15 years old, cried as she fell down. She couldn't get up, and after being trampled, her cries slowly faded out. An old lady was pressed up against the wall with so much force that she coughed up blood. People began jumping out of the windows on the other side of the subway car. They tried to run, but after just a few meters they saw something that made them run back. I began feeling a bit unsteady, dizzy almost. It was the effect of the high oxygen levels in this time period. I wasn't the only one feeling it. An elderly man fainted right in front of me. It would take some time to get used to the atmosphere, I thought. "Please," Jiang yelled. "Duck and cover!" No one listened. The subway car shook. It was the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It wasn't alone. They were circling us, pushing the subway car as if to investigate its structure. My terror was mixed with a sense of wonder. They were majestic. One of them stopped in an instant and tilted its head just like a bird would have done. It made a loud sound. It wasn't a roar, more like a hoarse grunt. It made its mate stop as well, and then they took off in a haste. Everyone was crying, asking themselves what was going on. I ran to the window to get a clearer look at the outside. We were in the middle of what looked like a savanna surrounded by dense jungle. "We're back in Canada," Jiang said next to me. "Or, in what will become Canada." "Somewhere in the north of the supercontinent, Laurasian," I said. "Why did they run away like that?" "No idea," Jiang said. "But look at that. What is that?" She pointed at a strange mountain in the horizon. It was perfectly black, which made it stand out in comparison to the mountains next to it. Dark spires rose to the sky around it, and huge clusters of what I could only assume was some kind of pterosaurs circled the top. "I don't know," I said, and before I could say anything else, I was interrupted by something that felt like a tiny earthquake. "Here, good!" someone yelled in Swedish. Everyone began to panic again. I pushed my way to the other side of the subway car and looked outside. Kira's body lay on the ground, her head missing, but that wasn't what made everyone afraid. Something was coming out of the jungle. Thousands upon thousands of predatory-like dinosaurs came running towards us, shaking the ground as they ran across it. Jiang joined me after having to force herself through everyone trying to escape the subway car to get away. "Are they velociraptors?" she said. "I'm pretty sure they are." "But they shouldn't be here," I said. "They lived 10 million years earlier, and not in this part of the world." "They look wrong, too," Jiang said. "Don't just stand there," someone yelled at us. "We need to get the fuck out of here." I didn't listen. "They're too white," I said. "It looks like their feathers have been picked. And what are those black patches covering parts of their bodies? I can't make it out. It looks like some kind of slime. And why are they moving like a herd?" They were coming closer at an alarming speed. Almost all the passengers had climbed outside on the other side now and began running for their lives. But we stayed. The inside of the subway car was probably still the safest place we agreed on without even having to discuss it. "They aren't moving like a herd," Jiang said with a tremor in her voice. "They are moving like a swarm." The strangest thing was that amongst them there were other dinosaurs too. I could see several triceratops, common for this era, and a few stegosaurs which should have disappeared millions of years earlier. They all looked equally white as if they didn't have any pigment at all except for the black goo. "They're so pale," I said. "They look almost dead." "This is insane," Jiang said. "What the hell is going on here?" "We won't be able to figure this out now," I said. "They'll reach us in a matter of minutes. I think we should climb up on the roof. Do you think we can do that?" We left our bags in the subway car and helped each other onto the roof while the swarm kept getting closer. I climbed up first. Jiang yelled for Rodney to come out while I helped her up. Rodney clumsily fell out of one of the windows. He nervously looked at the swarm of dinosaurs, then at us. "Come on, Rodney," Jiang yelled. "Take my hand." He ran up to us and stared at Jiang's hand with more panic than when he had seen the approaching dinosaurs. "I don't like being touched," he said. "You can do it, Rodney," Jiang said. "Trust me." Only seconds remained now. Some of the black mass covering the dinosaurs formed crystal-like spikes that grew out from their heads. Nothing made sense. Rodney scratched his chin frantically, spun around in some kind of frustration, and mumbled something we couldn't hear. "He can't do it," I said. "He's gonna die." "Rodney!" Jiang yelled with a desperate plea in her voice. "You have to take my hand now if you want to live." The first velociraptor ran past the subway car at an incredible speed. The second one, only a second away, had its eyes set on Rodney. Its large, drooling mouth, filled with razor-sharp teeth, reminded me of a sinister smile. Rodney closed his eyes and screamed. Then he reached for Jiang's hand. She grabbed it, stood up and tried to pull him up, but he was too heavy for her. I quickly reached for Jiang's hands to help her. For a second I thought it was too late. Rodney was halfway up. The velociraptor jumped in an attempt to bite his leg. I threw myself backward, pulling Jiang with me, and Rodney up on the roof, just a fraction of a second before he would have been trapped in the jaws of that fearsome beast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode, be sure to pop over to the author's Reddit profile, that's Odd Directions, and drop them a line, or even give them a glowing review. The link to their Reddit profile will be below in the description. Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed my narration, then please feel free to like and share the video. Leave a comment, and don't forget to hit the subscribe button and tap that notification bell and select all. That way you'll receive all notifications each time I upload a new video. Have you had any cryptid sightings, paranormal or supernatural encounters, or even had a creepy or terrifying situation that you would like to share? Or even have you written a CreepyPasta story that you would like me to narrate? If so, you can send me all your stories, encounters, etc. to cryptidsroost@gmail.com. And if you would like to remain anonymous, that's fine with me. I also have a Facebook group, Twitter, Reddit, and a Discord account. If you would like to support this channel and help make it grow, my PayPal is paypal.me/Cryptids Roost. Again, that and all other links will be listed below. And don't forget, where fear is, happiness is not.